Hey, what's up, guys? All right, well, welcome in for this little quick tidbit on ESPN or UFC on ESPN. I am Albert Apache. We got this little red pill morsel going on really quickly. Sorry I couldn't do a full breakdown on everything, the entire card, but I did want to take some time and talk about this matchup. It has been long overdue, a long time in the making, and that is Brian Ortega versus the Korean Zombie. All right, man. So Brian Ortega has been away from the octagon for quite a long time. He's been away from the octagon since he took that brutal, just schooling by Max Holloway, and it hurts me to say that because I am a huge Ortega fan, or at least I had been, and he just got picked apart, and it was really sad to watch. The gap was much bigger than I had anticipated. I thought was going to be a much closer fight, and it just started to unravel. I would say probably, it started unraveling pretty quick, but it really unraveled when Max started turning up the heat in those later rounds, uh, and unfortunately, the issue with Ortega was that um, he was pretty much only trying to roll with punches. It seemed like his defense was to roll with punches rather than uh, block or slip them. And in the UFC and MMA, blocking punches is very important. It's something you have to do with these small gloves. I mean, rolling with punches after a while, they're gonna add up as far as doing damage to your face, Um, even if they're not rocking you per se, because that's not a lot of padding. It's going to do damage to your face. It is going to cause, the hematomas and stuff like that. So it was kind of sad to see. So, and it's been a while since we've seen Korean Zombie. Not as long as Brian Ortega, but it's been a while. And I'm really excited to see this fight. I really want to see how much different Ortega looks. If you don't know, Brian Ortega has switched out everything in his camp except for Henner Gracie as his jiu-jitsu coach. Sounds like I did listen to an interview by Brian. It was about a year ago. I think it was going into the Korean Zombie fight the first time before it got canceled. And he was talking about, I think it's like going to be the first time he's worked with a legitimate strength and conditioning coach, somebody who like specializes in strength and conditioning, and that's their like full time job. And he switched up his striking camps. I want to say I saw some footage of him at the Anderson Silva facility. I don't know if that's still where he's striking out of, but I did see that. I heard he was keeping his cards really close to his vest as far as who he was training with, who his new striking coaches are going to be, all that kind of stuff. But I am really excited to see what Brian Ortega looks like. Now, the last time I talked about Brian Ortega, it was because he had gotten into that little Twitter back and forth with Jay Park, and then later on, he actually went up to Jay Park at a UFC event and assaulted him essentially, and that really turned me off. It did turn me off because you know it, you're you're a professional fighter. Like it, really, you're gonna let somebody who their job is to be a promoter, their job is as a manager is to get people fights, is to get people into the octagon with their client. You're gonna let that person get inside of your head to the point where you're gonna assault them, and they're not even a professional fighter. They probably don't even really train. Like it. Don't get me wrong. I have said things in the past about Ali being over provocative at times, but that's a whole nother thing. Like he's over there not just talking on Twitter. He's literally going up to fighters and getting in their faces and threatening them in their face, which isn't something that Jay Park did. So I just feel like it's a little ridiculous that Ortega did that. So that took a little bit of shine off of him for me, myself, as a fan. Not that he cares one bit what I think. I'm just being honest with you in my assessment. Um, Korean Zombie, his fighting style also really has evolved, it seems like, ever since he did his stint with the Korean military. Seems like he's come back. It seems like he fights a lot smarter. It seemed like in the past when he was younger, he would just kind of come forward, uh, and he would take one to give one. And now his striking, I think, is much more methodical. It's much more efficient than it was before. Now, I think what's interesting here is that the fact that you got somebody who's a bit taller in Ortega, and a bit shorter with Korean Zombie here, but the reach on the Zombie is ridiculous. I am so looking forward to this because it's going to tell us a lot about where Brian Ortega is. Like, how much has he improved in his striking? Um, how much is he going to change his game plan, right? Because if you look at this, I mean, he is the taller fighter, but he is giving up reach, which means that if it is a striking match, Korean Zombie is going to have shots to the body pretty easily. He's going to be able to reach Ortega, even though Ortega has the height advantage. So it's going to be kind of tough. Also, Ortega's old style was to kind of come forward and pressure, which Korean Zombie seems to deal with really nicely. He's always seemed to really be a really excellent counter fighter, and that might play into it. So I'm interested in seeing what Ortega brings. Is he going to be still? Is that more of a mentality thing, or was that a coaching thing? And if it was a coaching thing, how is it going to change? Also, further, one of the things I used to think about Brian Ortega was that I felt that his wrestling skills, his ability to take people down when he decided to take them down, was not as high as it could be. I felt like it was something that was a weapon that if he had it in his toolbox, he was not exploiting enough, especially given his high level of jiu-jitsu. I mean, he has a very high level of jiu-jitsu. And that would mean that if he could get people to the ground, and particularly once he got on top of them, I mean, there is a lot of things he could be doing from there. Everything from submissions to striking to his ground and pound. It would only make his ground and pound that much more dangerous. It would only make his submissions that much more dangerous, given that he could switch between the two. And so I had always felt like Ortega, he wasn't utilizing the weapon, the tool in his toolbox of getting takedowns, his wrestling. So I'm going to be really interested to see how that plays out. Now, in this particular, in the featherweight division, this is a super interesting matchup. I want to say I read not too long ago that Dana is looking at this fight as a possible uh, contender spot. So this would become the winner of this fight would become the number one contender. What would that mean for the featherweight division? I mean, honestly, Max, you can't give him another shot to regain his title, right? You can't give him another shot. That would 3 fights in a row for the title. That's just a little bit over the top. Even though both fights were close, and the second fight was even closer than the first. It makes for a boring promotion, and it also doesn't make the kind of money that the UFC probably wants to make, right? It makes more sense to let Volkanovski defend it against somebody else, and then let Max, rebuild some of his brand and then match them up. That's what makes the most amount of sense. But how would Volkanovski do, against Brian Ortega, against the Korean Zombie? How well would he do against one of these guys? I mean, what would that mean for the division? I think either one of these guys really makes an exciting matchup. It is a matchup where Volkanovski, not that he's not used to it, but again, he's going to be the shorter fighter. He's going to be and when I say shorter, I don't just mean like shorter in as in height, but he's going to be shorter as in length. He's not going to be as long as these two guys. I wonder what Volkanovski would do against a Brian Ortega. I don't know if those same calf kicks will be there. But again, we don't know. There's so much unknown. I mean, really, honestly, I think the most interesting thing um, would be if Ortega won and went on to fight for the title against Volkanovski, only because there are so many question marks about Ortega and what his evolution looks like. For instance, if Ortega were to come out and get a really quick win over the zombie, right? Let's say, slip, a dive, whatever, head kick, bam, knockout, and he moves on, it would create even more question marks about, well, what has he been training? What has he been doing? Oh, we didn't really get to see a lot out of him. And it would be really awesome for, the Volkanovski fight. If, however, we see a war, if I think honestly even though it'd be entertaining in the moment of the fight to watch a war between these two guys, let's say like a back and a forth, and Ortega goes forward, and Korean Zombie, he counters, and he lands some good shots coming in, but Brian Ortega lands some good shots on the entry, and back and forth and back and forth, and it's anybody's fight going into the fifth round, and maybe somebody just ekes out a win one way or the other. For on Brian Ortega's side, if he were to win a match that way, I think that makes for boring TV, right? If he's still the same guy, still the same mentality of fighter, still coming forward, still fighting very similar, exactly the same style, just maybe a little bit more efficient, or a little bit better at blocking, or whatever the case may be, but he's relatively the same fighter. I think that's a little bit more boring to sell as the UFC against Volkanovski. Um, I think it's more exciting to sell the Korean Zombie that way, just simply because that's kind of his brand or his trademark anyway. So I don't think there's too much lost. I really feel like what the UFC is looking for here is either a war in which Korean Zombie wins and goes on to challenge Volkanovski, or you want to see something early for Ortega, so that way it kind of keeps under wraps and it builds that anticipation for what are we going to see out of Brian Ortega against Volkanovski. I would love to see something that I haven't seen out of Ortega. A few more kicks. His boxing has always been really, really nice. I have felt like his kicking game has been a little non-existent. I feel like his takedown, like I said, his wrestling style takedowns and shooting from far and things of that kind of nature, or even getting close to the clinch and then changing levels there. I felt like his level changing hasn't really been there. I think it makes it a little bit easier to fight him when you're not worried about the level changing. You definitely have to be worried about going to the ground, but you don't have to worry about necessarily him initiating, a single or a double. It's not something that he does, on a consistent basis. I mean, even look at his takedown average here. I mean, his takedown average is less than that of the Korean Zombie. I mean, and they have, close, similar numbers of fights. I just don't know that it's something that is Brian Ortega's bread and butter. You see here his takedown. You see the average, and then you see the accuracy, 16%. I mean, wow, that is crazy bad. Okay. Now here's the thing. I don't think that's because he's bad at doing it. I think it's because it's something that he wasn't focusing on before. So I'm very interested to see if his new coaches start to try to exploit his amazing jiu-jitsu a little bit more, and exploit his ground game a little bit more than what we've seen in the past. I actually think that, with the motor that he has, because he seems to have a pretty good motor, it seems like he has really good endurance. I would like to see him adopt a more, kind of, I guess, Khabib style attack, or maybe we might even say a Damian Maya style attack, where he tries to wear guys down, and get in and wrestle with them, and get the takedown and then submit them, right, and make them live in his world. But this is going to be an interesting card. I hope you guys enjoy it. I might try to do a fight companion via Facebook or something like that. If you want to check us out at Open Source Self Defense Fitness and grappling, we'll probably do something like that. But if we do anything at all, I don't know. Super busy weekend, guys. So anyhow, I hope you guys enjoy the fights. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, by the way, guys, if you haven't yet, like, subscribe. I don't ask every single video, but it would be nice. Been putting out videos for a while now, and you know, give me some feedback too, guys. If there's things that I do well, tell me, hey, I like it when you do this format. If there's things that I don't do well, let me know, man. I don't like this. This is not where you're at your best. Hey, man, it's all gravy. I just want to get better at what I do. So we'll catch you all later. Remember, until then, be purposeful, be practical, get fit with a purpose, guys.
Changes soon, can get a doobie on a plane, but there's Uzis in our schools. Every dude who touched a boob or a booty getting me tooed. What you expect from the kids who went to Hooters after school? We're all triggered and defensive, we're all racist and we're sexist. We all grew up watching South Park. How are we offended? Now being fat is beautiful? Name a thing that you can't do. Jumping jacks, run a mile, live past 42. Man, it used to be cool to just flip a bird to the system, and now it's trendy to be triggered and pretend you're a victim. It's my race, it's my weight, it's because I'm a Christian. I hate the internet and anyone who has an opinion. And everybody angry if you say white. Okay, fine. Pass me the brush and I'll paint my face to the shades right. Let's talk about abortion. Sorry, tell me how this works. Bacteria is life on Mars, but a heartbeat isn't life on Earth? Weird. You're so stupid.